So first of all, Roger, thank you so much for doing this interview. It was really great to kind of hear a bit about your placement and how you found it. So before we kind of kick off, do you just want to introduce yourself, please? Tell everybody what course you're studying and where you did your placement.
Yeah, hello. My name is Rocha, and I'm doing my final year biomedical science undergraduate degree. I finished my placement, sandwich placement year, and now I'm finishing my biomedical science degree.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And so, where did you do who did you do your placement with?
So my placement was with AusDiagnostics. It was in Chesham in Buckinghamshire, so that's like 3 hours from here, from Sheffield,
Oh,
relatively
okay.
close to London.
Yeah, and how did you, obviously you mentioned it was 3 hours away. Did you relocate to do that placement? Did you move away?
Yes, I had to relocate. I had to find a new room in Chesham,
Yeah,
and yeah, that's why I couldn't obviously stay in Sheffield, so I did
yeah.
have to relocate.
Be a bit of a long commute, I think, wouldn't it, if you were doing that one?
Yeah,
Um, and
well, it was all
and
right.
yeah, and so what did your kind of placement involve? Like, what was your role? What was a typical day like?
So my placement was with AusDiagnostics. I was a lab technician. I was working in a lab in
Mm-hmm.
production mainly, and I also did a little bit of QC, but it was
Okay.
a fully hands-on lab placement. So my day would be like I'd go in the morning and I'd look at the production schedule, and
Mm-hmm.
so I would do whatever is on the schedule, and that could be making batches, making intermediates, for instance, and that sort of thing. It was like a weekly thing. It wasn't a research type of placement, so we didn't have like new things every day. We'd have
Okay.
the same sort of stuff week in and week out. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew what I'd be doing like every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. And were you working as part of a small team, I presume, I guess, in that kind of environment?
Yeah, it was quite a small lab, a small team, which was good because it helped us to like communicate with each other better.
Yeah.
And so I think there was like 6 or 7 people in a lab,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd all get trained and evaluated on all the different tasks. And so it was quite a nice environment, quite friendly environment.
Yeah, that sounds really good. So you've talked a bit about what you've got involved in, a bit of a typical kind of day and week. Was there anything that you did do that surprised you, for example, that perhaps you didn't think you'd get involved in, but you got the opportunity to do on placement?
Well, in terms of tasks and activities, there wasn't anything actually that surprised me because everything that I did went as planned. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I did my interview, they talked to me about what I was going to do during the year. So
Yeah.
everything did go as planned. But what I'd say was to highlight will probably be the flexibility of the job. It was quite a friendly environment, like I said before. It's quite a nice atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was, friendly, helpful. The managers, they were young and helpful. My colleagues, they were all graduates basically, so my
Okay.
my age, and
Yeah.
so that made it a really good environment to work in, very enjoyable. So that's one thing that actually surprised me because when I first went into the placement, I thought it was going to be like that I was going to be the only student, the youngest, the youngest person, but I actually
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. Everyone was sort of my age, and that was quite good, something that I quite liked.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice, like you say, different to what you expected and the kind of good benefit of the program, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And was there any particular reason why you chose AusDiagnostics? So why did you go for them for your placement?
Well, it was the fact that they offered me a full hands-on lab placement, which is what I was looking for.
Hmm.
I know that there were other placements too, but they were not as they were not in. I was not going to be in the lab 5 days a week, so I
Okay.
wanted to get more lab experience because that's what I felt I needed to improve on after I finished my second year, and so
Yeah.
that's what all diagnostics offered me, and also the fact that they were a small company as
Hmm.
opposed to a big company where you kind of sometimes you get lost in the because there's so many people around and so on. So in a small company, in a small environment, you kind of, I feel like you progress better in some
Yeah.
aspects.
Yeah, you get some of that kind of more one-to-one, I guess, support, don't you? And I guess they know you as an
Definitely.
individual rather than being in a big company. So yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like a really positive experience. So you mentioned about obviously lab skills. You've obviously got a lot of that. What kind of other skills did you get on placement that I guess thinking back that you've developed?
Yeah. Well, apart from lab skills, there were obviously, professional skills such as communications, for instance,
Hmm.
those sort of things that you can, develop as a person instead of as opposed to just in the lab.
Hmm.
Transferable skills such as communication, attention to detail, those sort of things.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I don't know, looking back, is there anything that you can say my biggest achievement on placement was this? What's the kind of thing that you're most proud of or that you enjoyed the most?
Well, there isn't any a single thing that that I could say this was my biggest achievement. I'd say
Hmm.
completing the placement, and ending in good terms with with the managers, with everyone,
Hmm.
having done everything that I wanted to do. That sort of thing was, I'd say, was my biggest achievement. There isn't a single thing that I could pick out, but
Yeah.
yeah, they completing the placement and having enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Like you say, I mean, it doesn't have to be one specific project. I think, like you say, recognizing that you've took the time out, you've done a placement, you've completed it, you kind of achieved everything you want to, got some really good feedback and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's really positive. Yeah. Um, I guess I just want to ask, slightly thinking about the recruitment process now, if you can remember that far back. Um, what was it like when you were applying for placements, and I guess the recruitment process in particular?
Yes, so I was applying through Handshake, which I think when I was applying, it was a new thing.
Hmm.
So I did apply for a couple of placements. Some of them I didn't get, I didn't get a reply back. Two of them I almost got accepted, which was for GSK and Thermo Fisher, two big companies.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
but then I didn't get accepted for those ones. But then
Hmm.
I found this AusDiagnostics placement, and after seeing the advert, I was like, I want to do that because it's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so I sent my CV and my cover letter as usual, and then
Hmm.
I got accepted for an interview, which it was quite a long interview. It was like an hour or so, or an hour and a half if I remember well.
Hmm.
But it was actually alright. It went alright. I did, they asked me the typical questions that they ask you in an interview, and there was also some more specific questions about molecular biology, PCR sort of things, which is what the company specializes in.
Okay.
So yeah, I did well in my interview, and then eventually I got accepted.
Yeah. So how did you face, I don't know, rejection along the way? Like you said, you applied for a couple of other places and didn't get there. How did you manage to make yourself keep going, I guess, keep being motivated?
Well, it's the fact that I really, really did want to do a placement. I didn't want to give up. I wasn't
Hmm.
applying to as many placements as possible, but I
Hmm.
was applying specifically to those that offered me lab type of job. And
Hmm.
so I didn't give up. I didn't get depressed or so, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, because I
Yeah.
knew that there were lots of people applying too. So I knew that the competition was quite high, and
Hmm.
so that didn't let me down. So I wanted to, I knew that I wanted to do a placement, so I kept pushing, and
Kept
eventually I
going.
got what I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, well done you. It sounds like as well you just touched on kind of a really good approach that I think you've said there, in terms of you wanted a lab placement, so they were rather than applying for everything, you kind
Hmm.
of specified your approach based on what you wanted and what the job was like. So I
Yeah,
think that's
that's
a
right.
really good bit of advice, I guess, for other students to think about. So yeah, I guess thinking about the future now, and any advice for other students, or would you recommend doing a placement to other students then? Is that something that you think is a good thing to do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's too good of an opportunity not to doing a placement,
Mm.
because I know that not every university does offer a placement,
Hmm.
and so it's a really good opportunity to do, whether you want to push your career in science or not. Doing a placement will obviously give you those transferable skills that you probably don't get at university.
Hmm.
Once you get some labs during your first or second year, they're not quite the same as being in a lab every single day, 5 days a week or so. And
Hmm.
so when you go on placement, you get to see what it's like to work in the industry. And so I definitely recommend other students to do a placement. I mean, there's nothing to lose when you do a placement. You have so much to gain, not just in in the lab or in the workplace, but outside too. Because
Hmm.
if you have to commute like I did, then it becomes all part of the experience. Your life outside work and
Yeah.
everything. So you meet new people, some of which make a good impact on your life.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider for other students too. So definitely do a placement, in my
Mm.
opinion.
And just kind of again building on that, so what have you brought back from placement that's perhaps helping you now in your final year? So maybe like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
so
skills or experience or yeah.
I feel a lot more disciplined, motivated than I did when I finished my second year. And this is
Mhm.
actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do a placement too, because at the end of my second year, when I finished my exams, I knew that I wasn't ready for my final year due to
Mhm.
all the, stress from my exams. From, we just finished with the pandemics, and
Yeah.
some some lectures were online and some other were in person, but it wasn't fully,
Mm.
on campus. So I was quite a bit nervous about my final year. So I
Mhm.
wanted to take like a year off, and what best doing a placement was actually the best idea in that situation. And I think a lot of students can relate here. And if you don't feel ready for your final year for whatever reason, then doing a placement is probably the best thing to do. And so now I feel a lot more motivated, to do my exams, to do my final project, especially, which is going to be a
Yeah.
lab-based project. And so I feel more ready, not just in terms of skills in the lab, or in terms of other skills too, like communication, team working, for instance, and that sort of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, sounds like really, like you say, yeah, that's a really great answer, to be honest. Great way to kind of think about things, and rather than kind of take that time out or a gap year or pause in study, by doing a placement, obviously you kind of enhanced your skills and built on those.
Yeah.
Do you know what you're looking to do after graduation yet? Has your placement influenced anything around thoughts after graduation at the minute?
So at the moment, I'm not really certain of what I want to do after graduation, but I do know now that I've done a placement, I know what it's like to work as a lab technician, and
Hmm.
I quite enjoy the lab working in a lab. So I'm keeping my options open. I don't know if I'm going to do a master's yet or not,
Hmm.
but I'd probably like to do a lab-based job because I quite liked it. Now
Yeah.
I don't know specifically in which scientific field I'd like to do that in,
Hmm.
but the placement did influence my decision for this.
Yeah. And it's great that you've got some experience like to take forward in your applications as well based on that. Okay, then final question, I guess. Have you got any tips or advice to other students that are currently watching this and kind of searching for placement themselves?
Yeah, so I'd say, like I said before, just go and do a placement. The year is gonna go really fast. There's nothing to lose when you do a placement. There's so much to gain. My tips would be just to make the most of it. Engage
Mhm.
with your placement. Talk to a lot of you're gonna meet people from different backgrounds, not just in your workplace but outside too. So talk to them, engage with them, learn from them, and really make the best of your placement year, because it's going to be a beneficial year once you leave university. It's going to give you so much advantage when looking for future jobs.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that advice, Roger. I'm sure a lot of students will find that really useful. So thank you again for taking the time to talk to me today about that.